Welcome to the second webinar in the Reuse Design Leaders series, focusing on designing and building with reclaimed wood. My name is Simona Fisher, and I'm an architect and sustainability director with MSR Design in Minneapolis. This series is hosted by Hennepin County Department of Environment and Energy and developed in collaboration with the University of Minnesota Center for Sustainable Building Research, supported by multiple project partners. AIA and GBCI credits are available for those tuning in live. And this webinar series is a follow-up to the Project Manager's Guide to Material Reuse in Commercial Buildings, which is a resource to help owners, architects, and contractors integrate reclaimed materials on commercial scale projects. And right now, we're in phase 2 with a grant from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to address specific barriers that AEC teams face when trying to implement reuse on commercial scale projects. We have 3 parallel efforts going. We're working with AEC professionals, and that is part of this. That's what this series is part of. We have a training for entrepreneurs to develop reclaimed material businesses. And we're hosting workshops with commercial scale property owners. And I always like to remind myself that the challenge of bringing building material reuse to scale in our industry has 2 faces. There's the need for technical knowledge, but there's also the need to shift our mindset. When you go against the established flow of how materials are sold and manufactured and procured, it takes some effort. So I want to give a shout out to the growing number of people who are working to make reuse happen in our industry. Today, we are talking about reclaimed wood. We'll discuss different types of salvaged wood, the development of a salvaged wood standard, how we can reuse glue lambs specifically, and also a case study of a multi-path wood reuse project in Port of Seattle. Please use the Q&A and we'll take questions at the end. And we're also keeping the chat open and we'll try to keep an eye on that. So in the first webinar, we covered some stats on the potential for reuse. And one of the materials we noted that pops up in construction and demolition landfills way more than it should is wood, making up an estimated 15% of inbound C&D waste globally. But wood has the potential to be a net carbon sequestering building material when it's sustainably harvested, and wood releases that stored carbon when it's burned or if it's not prevented from decomposing. So given the need to sequester carbon right now at a global scale, reusing wood is a critical part of that goal. But what counts as salvaged wood? Until recently, I will say that I thought of sustainably harvested wood as coming only from 2 sources, either FSC or SFI certified, or from deconstruction, such as the wood sourced by Lumber Stash, which is a Minneapolis example of a company that focuses on wood reclamation from building deconstruction. But there are actually a lot of other trees that get taken down for different reasons that are not for their timber value, such as trees removed due to storm damage or invasive species or disease or infestation, city maintenance type of thing. They might be taken down for forest management, for fire prevention, for utility work, or one I had not thought about is orchards that are no longer producing food. The trees are often burned. And so, best case, some of this reused wood does get reused right now. For example, Wood from the Hood is a local shop that reuses trees, such as ash trees, among others, removed by the city of Minneapolis due to the spread of emerald ash borer, to make furnishings and interior finishes. But much of it is burned or left to rot in non-optimal decomposition conditions that can create methane, or you can get big trees being shredded for mulch. And there's a lot of waste happening there, as well as in the construction and demolition, and it seems like an opportunity. The issue is, how do we trust the sources? Even though these sources of wood exist and trees get taken down for non-commodity reasons all the time, and we don't want them to go to waste, as an industry, we also don't want to create a slippery slope of harvesting trees that should not be for sale. So I was interested to learn about efforts to create and define a set of reclaimed wood standards, which brings us to our first speaker. And Jennifer can take the screen now. Jennifer Alger is president of Far West Forest Products and has been working with urban salvaged woods for over 25 years. She's the director of the Urban Wood Network Western Region and founded the Urban Salvaged Reclaimed Woods USRW standard to facilitate chain of custody and a pathway for certification for urban salvaged and reclaimed wood. I've invited her to speak about the development of the standard and certification that are now available to the public as a working draft, and to give us some detailed definitions of what counts as urban wood and the implications for designers and contractors. Jennifer, thank you for joining us.
How I got involved in this, go back into the 90s. My family, we came from traditional forestry. In the 90s, I took over marketing for our family business. And when I took over marketing for our family business, I put my marketing hat on and, okay, what is it that sets us apart? What is different about what Far West Forest Products is doing now? And I realized it was the source. We started as a traditional forestry family, but we weren't doing that primarily anymore. Most of what we were selling came from urban or salvaged or reclaimed material. And so I'll explain a little bit more about that later. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I need to tell this story. And so I started to brand Far West Forest Products as urban salvaged and reclaimed woods, and or as selling those. And so I started to look around, and I'm looking at, boy, it stores carbon, and and it helps local jobs, and it just does all these great things. And I realized, oh my goodness, our little company out here in California cannot handle all of this. And so I started to look around the country and realized that there were others kind of cropping up too. And a group of us started to network informally. I won't give the whole history of it, but later formed a network called the Urban Wood Network, and created an entity called Urban Salvaged and Reclaimed Woods, Inc., to write standards for urban wood. And I'll go into all the whys of that here in a moment. So we knew that if we wanted to rescue more urban wood, we were going to need to sell more urban wood. We were going to need to reuse what was there, take the trees, take the lumber, use it all, recycle it, reuse it, and then replant the right tree in the right place so that we could start the whole cycle again. And in order to sell more urban wood, we knew that we were going to need to define what is urban wood. What does it even mean? So sellers, including people who would later become Urban Wood Network members, they were selling wood that wasn't properly dried or sterilized. There was confusion on what urban lumber was. And I had gone out, trying to use more of this wood. I had gone out to architects, designers, specifiers, lumber companies to try to get all of our aggregate of all these people producing urban wood to get this wood into a corner of their lumber store as urban salvaged or reclaimed, and to get them to specify it in projects. And people loved it, and yes, people were using it, but it was a harder ask because people were asking, just like Simona had mentioned, if it's sustainable, it's going to be FSC or SFI. And they're saying, okay, where's your urban wood certification? Well, we didn't have one. We had Far West Forest Products could tell our chain of custody. We could tell our story, but there was no third party verification. There was no way to verify it, and no way to really do it at scale and move the needle. And so we decided, well, we're going to write a standard. And the first thing to do when you're writing a standard is to define what it is that you're standardizing. And so we came up with a definition for urban wood. And we, being the industry that is now the urban wood, started as a movement, and now it is an industry. Urban wood, the first thing we want to make sure people are aware of is it doesn't have to come from a city. When we started, you noticed it was urban, salvaged, and reclaimed as three separate things. When we started to really reach out, I want to say around 2016, and work on funding from the Forest Service to define our industry and move it from a movement to an industry, there was some push that they wanted us to put urban as the top umbrella, and then fresh cut urban, salvaged, and reclaimed. And so today, here's the definition. If you want to take a screenshot of that, you can. Urban wood can be defined as any wood that was not harvested for its timber value and was diverted or removed from the waste stream. It can come from deconstruction, fresh cut urban trees, or salvaged trees. Farms, roadsides, orchards, all of these different places, the common denominator, it was not harvested for its timber value. And it's irrelevant to density. One of the things at first was, well, is it urban only if it's in a city over 2,500 people? Or, what is the census? None of that is relevant with this definition. And so I want to show you some examples of urban wood that is coming from those different buckets of sourcing. And so the first one that I've got here, this is an example of urban wood that came from the city street trees of Milwaukee. This is the Baird Center, and this wood was provided from Woodward Urban Forest products. And we know that it meets the chain of custody and that it follows the standards, one, because we work very closely with Woodward, but two, because, and they know it because the trees came from Milwaukee, whose urban forest management plan does not have removing trees for their timber value as one of their measures that they use for determining if a tree needs to come out. And so next source is Fresh Cut Urban Forest. Also, this is wood supplied from the Hood in Minneapolis, and these came from Minneapolis street trees. These would have gone into the waste stream. And also, wood from the Hood, more images. This also fits within the traditional urban environment, street trees from city of Minneapolis. This one fits into the salvaged bucket. This is wood supplied from Far West Forest Products, my company, and this was fire salvage. And these trees had to be removed. Sometimes it gets really ugly when fire salvage is taken out, because just because a tree's gone through a fire does not mean it needs to come down. Trees are resilient. They can live through fire. But these trees did indeed need to come down. There's redwood, Doug fir, and pine in this. And this did not come from a traditionally urban, most of it didn't come from a traditionally urban environment. A lot of it came off the Paradise Fire here in California. The third example is deconstructed. And deconstructed simply means that it was in a structure previously of some sort and came out. It was used as lumber previously. And so that deconstructed is what we're calling reclaimed wood. And this wood was supplied by Urban Ashes out of Michigan. I failed to put in slides showing the orchard salvage and all that, but I think you guys get the picture. So we started with a definition, and then we began to write a sustainable, conscious, and purpose-driven standard. We wanted consistent, high-quality products. We wanted to meet the requests of specifiers so that now they know there's this other sustainable wood product that is used and can be used at scale within nature's inventory of not being harvested for its timber value. Customer recognition through consistent branding, USRW, standardizing, unifying, transparency, traceability, chain of custody. All of this is done meeting third-party verification so that it's not just Far West telling the story or Woodward or Wood from the Hood. It's this third party verification saying, yes, they're meeting these high standards. It was written to align with FSC, SFI, PEFC, and LEED requirements. We hired Katie Fernholz from Dovetail Partners to help us do that. We just went through a pilot round, and so it will be we'll be revisiting that and making sure it still aligns so that it can fit into those rigorous programs. And we think that's very important, that we're working with existing standards and not against them. So as you saw from some of those pictures, this is a defined and supported existing pathway. It is not experimental. This is not us, guessing if this will work. This works. We now have established standards and certification. A lot of those standards and certification were written based upon the existing companies like ours that have been doing this for decades. It fits into existing specifications. It's aligned with industry processes. We have a growing supplier network who are working to get these standards and processes in place so that they can also be third-party certified. Proven project applications. It's already being used in commercial, civic, industrial projects, residential, lots of hospitality projects where it's worked, and even hospitals. And it's supported by industry organizations. And it was funded, I would be remiss to say, it was funded by U.S. Forest Service to write the standards along with CAL FIRE. And I want to give you guys some actionable steps that you can take today, right now, to start using USRW certified urban wood. Start with one application. Don't think you have to do your whole project. We'd love it if you did your whole project. But if you could identify one application where you can reuse wood that fits into that urban wood category, not harvested for its timber value category, we would love that. Add it to one spec. Specify USRW certified urban wood. Even if you know who you want to use within that, say you want to use Wood from the Hood. USRW certified urban wood supplied by Wood from the Hood. Great. Then we're getting that out there. Engage early with your supplier. That way you can align your material and your availability. Bring it to your client, position it as local, hyper local if applicable, carbon smart, story driven, and partner on a pilot project. We will, at USRW, we will support the coordination and we will help tell that project story and get it some more visibility. That's just a sell sheet. I won't go into that. One of the questions when I was trying to get it specified way back in the day to try and get it out there, one of the big questions that we kept being asked is, okay, so say we specify urban wood or USRW, how do we find it? And one is we'll have you a list of suppliers who can supply it. And another thing is Ancestry is an existing inventory management system for small sawmill businesses who are producing urban wood. This summer, Ancestry is planning to launch an aggregated marketplace, and they will be able to tag on there if they're using USRW certified urban wood. And so you will be able to find urban wood across the nation and into Canada by going to ancestry.io. You can, if you want to be notified when that goes live, you can scan that QR code, go down to the bottom, click on contact, say, hey, I was on this webinar. I want to be notified when that goes live. One of the things that Ancestry is doing to help people like yourselves find urban wood, as well as we're creating simultaneously while the aggregated marketplace is being developed, it's developing small local and hyper local wood groups to show what wood is available in, say, Hennepin County, what USRW certified wood would be available there. We're piloting that right now with the California Wood Supply Group, helping tell the story through case studies, media, and industry visibility. So who is in for their first USRW project? We would love to have you reach out. You can scan that QR code. That'll go to my LinkedIn if you want to reach out directly to me. You can email info@urbansalvagedwoods.com, and we would love to walk with you and work with you on your first USRW certified urban wood project. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. I really appreciate the work that you are doing to create this standard.
Thank you.
So we might get some questions in the chat. For the moment, I'm just going to keep going for time, and we will go to our next speaker. So the next person that will share is, okay, to back up for a sec. We talked in the previous session about the concept of the reuse ladder and the goal of the circular economy being to try and keep materials at the top of that ladder, especially high carbon, high value, or large volume materials. And I just want to say, I think I don't want to give the impression that decorative repurposing or functional temporary reuse or recycling are not viable paths. I think there are a lot of times when those are the paths available to us. But if we try to keep things as high as possible, those are all great steps that are above landfill, or in this case of wood, burning or rotting, the things that we don't want. And on the note of keeping things high up that chain, the next speaker is Robin Jansen, and you can go ahead and take my screen. Robin Jansen has been the president of and creative director of Urban Evolutions for 28 years, a reclaimed material manufacturer and design firm based in the Midwest. She's a leader in wood reuse from deconstruction and salvaged trees, and is committed to promoting sustainability and driving an increase in the use of reclaimed wood by architecture firms. Her strength is implementing sustainable, scalable, cost-effective material solutions in modern commercial buildings. Robin, please go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Simona. Thank you, Jennifer. We are also, our company Urban Evolutions is a proud member of the Urban Wood Network, and we love manufacturing with urban wood. So we're one of those people out there drinking the Kool-Aid. So thanks for all your work. But today we're going to kind of pivot and talk a little bit about glulam. So reclaimed lumber, which is part of the definition that I was just listening to with Jennifer. So this is from deconstructed buildings. And when we think of glulam, or I wrote non-vintage here, or mid-century, this is not, we're not going to be focusing on that traditional reclaimed old growth lumber. I think you'll hear more about that with our next presenter. But this is stuff that is a little less sexy. So glulams, engineered beams, as well as 2x4s and 2x6s from, say, residential deconstruction, which is a growing industry. So we can go ahead. Emma's helping me with my slides. You can go to the next slide. So we're going to focus first on glulams. This is an early project, maybe 13 years, and I'm going to sort of talk about a progression here. This project was our first attempt at reusing glulams, a 1950s office built structurally with wood. You can go to the next slide, turned into a modern commercial office. Lots of wood here. The glulams, in this case, there was a goal to reuse them, but unfortunately, how they were removed, a little bit of exposure to moisture outside, there was less confidence, also maybe less ambition on the stakeholders in the project to reuse them structurally. So you can go to the next slide, Emma. There was more cosmetic applications here, still novel for the time period. This again, 12, 13 years ago. Using them for the stair systems here in the future. And at this point, we would be able to grade those to be used as structural stair stringers, but didn't make it on this project. And then the next slide, we resawed them and used them as cladding on the decking. Again, you'll see in our next case study in the future, and we've been able to use those structurally as decking, roof decking, as opposed to cladding. So next slide. So we're kind of progressing here. This is a project maybe 8 years ago that we used, again, salvaged glulams, and we're able to use them in a structural application. So you can go to the next slide. These were repurposed in the region, so not on site, but from a marina nearby. And there was quite a bit of car decking or roof decking that was needed on the project. So we were able to, if you look at the next slide, mill those glue lambs into a structural product. And instead of getting the glue lambs graded, we were able to grade that product. So that's a nice little hack in terms of getting a product like a glue lamb into a structural application. I think this is a very material-driven, simple application, which is typically really good when you're talking about working with reclaimed wood. A lot of material, a simple design or fabrication needed. So this is a great product for repurposing glue lambs. Next slide. Now we have a current project that is actually, it's been built. You'll see a picture of it. Residential project. So residential, always easier when you're talking about structural reuse of reclaimed wood. What we were able to sort of work with an engineer, structural engineer, and this kind of stuff happens. I mean, we're not the first to do this, but ambitious people who love reclaimed wood will get this done with a good structural engineer. And we just sort of overbuilt. So you can go to the next slide. So the roof system on this small 600 square foot guest cabin is glue lambs, and you can see them there. So again, just sort of overbuilding conservative estimates on what we think those glue lambs can hold. So we just overbuild. And who doesn't like more wood, right? Next slide. Now this project is exciting because this is sort of the full Monty, where we're taking glue lambs. This is a campus, very committed property owner. They're removing a couple buildings, taking the glue lambs, and the plan is to repurpose them structurally on that campus. We're in the middle of this project, so I don't have a lot of information to share, but I will tell you we are developing a bit of whether it's a guide or let's call it a handbook to this. And I just noted, I mean, I could talk for 20, 30 minutes, probably all day on this, but I'm going to just go real quick. We're really talking about phase one, that assess and recover. It's really important. You see on our first case study that there was some misses on how the glue lambs were handled, degraded, or there was not as much confidence then to regrade them for structural reuse. So assess, recover, then we move into sort and store. So in this case, not every glue lamb is going to be appropriate for reuse structurally. So we want to touch these things once. So we want to create those lanes before they're being removed, so we sort of know where they're going, right? They're big items. You don't want to be touching them twice. So that's sort of a phase we're in actually right now. Phase 3 is verifying or assigning structural design values to those reclaimed wood. The key is when you're removing something is even before you remove it, you want designers imagining and being able to put those into plans. So what can we do with this? For glue lambs, for an engineered glue lamb, a structural engineer needs to assign a design value to those. So with an engineered product, it's a little trickier than solid. So we're working on a few strategies on this project to get those design values assigned so that they can start designing the new buildings that they're working on. So it's very exciting. I would love, if you guys have projects, you want to know more about this one, I can share some. And if you have glue lambs, if you're an interest in reusing them, please. We're hot on this. We're looking for regional applications, not just, we want to be seeing this all over the country. You don't want to be moving glue lambs, reclaimed wood like that, far distances. So it's really important that we think regionally with this kind of reuse. And I'm just going to touch on a couple more things, which is that 2x4, 2x6s. So our next slide. So one quick thing. I just want to say, obviously, and as I mentioned with the house project, with adaptive reuse, there have been people all over the country reusing glue lambs, kind of on a one-off basis, right? This is an example of a shopping center, and structural engineers have been getting creative with the AEC community to do this work. So we are not inventing something. I think because our company is a product manufacturer and a creator, we want to do something that's repeatable and scalable. So I think what we do is say, how can we develop a process and what products make sense so that we can do this repeatable to make it the norm, where designers and architects are saying when they start building, they're thinking, I should go to reclaim first in this instance. So that's kind of our goal. But there are plenty of projects, you can hit the next slide, where people are doing this amazing work. Dimensional lumber is another challenge for us. And I say that because newly, so from mid-century and on, 2x4s and 2x6s are not old growth, rich patina, maybe saw marks, all of that. There are great markets for that traditional reclaim, say pre-1950. Afterwards, there really aren't great markets right now for 2x4s and 2x6s, particularly because 2x4s and 2x6s new are so cheap. So selling a reclaimed 2x4 and 2x6 is tough. So how do we think of products? What can we do to those materials to get them to build a market for it? And we'll go to the next slide. This was one of the early, I think, great ambitious use of reclaimed 2x4s, 2x6s, non-vintage. And this was the Candida building. Miller Hull, who you're going to hear from later, was a part of this. Shout out to them, Skanska, Lordak Sargent. This is a beautiful project where just shy of 50% of the wood on those NLT panels was from reclaimed 2x4s from old Hollywood movie sets. So amazing story as well. So building on that, we'll go to the next slide. We've been working with a little bit trying to productize that. We've been working with the people down in Georgia, Skanska and the Life Cycle Building Center, who have a bevy of 2x4s, 2x6s. We also have our own in the upper Midwest. How do we productize this? You can go to the next slide. And fortunately, this year, we were part of a project. This is in St. Paul, so we're back in Minnesota, where great things happen. Downtown St. Paul Airport, there was a small, well, it's actually the whole downtown airport building. I don't know what you call it. It's not a terminal. I don't know, because it's a private airport, but it's a nice building, right? You see it there. This was a case where it's 100% reclaimed. So the wood actually is getting regraded. So again, it's that progression, that step up from maybe where Candida was, what you stand on the shoulders of others and you take it one step further. This project is a bit of I would say a moonshot in terms of ambition. It is, they have huge, you can go to the next slide, this might help. The spans, the spans are massive. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So this reclaim panel, NLT panel, is 85 feet, and it's made of 2x12. So when I say like rocket moonshot, this is maybe not as repeatable and probably is very costly as we work with the engineers and the manufacturer on this. It's very expensive. I know lots of destructive test sampling needed because of the span. So this is one of those that's probably more aspirational. It's going to get people excited, but does it meet the repeatable, no, we probably need to be the just general aircraft version of this. That is better suited for reclaimed wood. We don't want to do things like destructive testing if the whole point is to preserve and not waste a lot of wood. So this is just an exciting project. It's beautiful. It's been a huge commitment from everybody involved. So this will put things on the map, which is very exciting. 20,000 board feet of reclaimed number 2 Doug fir. So it got graded on our site, went very fast. Was graded at number 2, which works for this application. So we're super excited to be a part of this. And last slide, I think. Just looking at time here. Yeah, so just to reiterate, the goal for structural reuse is, again, being repeatable and scalable, right? To not just have those moonshots, but have something that people start becoming, this is normal. Architects and designers think reclaimed first. Wouldn't that be amazing? Material driven versus concept driven. I think it's really important that we don't, well, I'll go to the last one, which is, how about we can't design before we understand our materials that are in our region, that are reclaimed and available and ready to be used. We really need to assess and understand those materials or materials on a site before we're going to deconstruct and rebuild. We really need to start with the material inventory and design around that. So when we design and then try to fit reclaimed materials into that design, we run into situations where we're maybe pushing the envelope too far, or we've got lengths that are not quite, they're just 6 feet too long for those glue lambs that were recovered on site. So we really need to put in some upfront energy on material inventories. I've got resources if you need help with that. there are options in your town, and we will help you with that. And also, I'd say the last thing is to know your material marketplace. Not every material that you would recover on a site is going to be able to be used in your building. So don't get frustrated. There are other buildings that will use those materials. So don't give up. Know going into a project of deconstruction or demolition is involved, know your reuse marketplace so that you can begin to get those into the stream. And maybe somebody like us comes along, grabs those materials and reuses them in a different project. So I think I spoke fast. I hope not too fast. Thank you so much. Again, my contact information there. Certainly, I hope you feel my enthusiasm. Would love to be reached out to if you have any projects with that tricky non-vintage lumber and glue lamps.
Thank you so much, Robin. That is fantastic work. I'm going to jump straight to Chris and Jake and let them grab the screen from here and introduce them so they can take the rest of the time. Chris is the Living Building Challenge Services Director and a Senior Architect at Miller Hull in Seattle, where he's led the design and certification of 7 living buildings. Chris has founded and participated in many sustainability groups in the industry and teaches graduate-level sustainability courses and speaks at conferences nationwide. Jake Labar is an associate and project manager at Miller Hull. As an affiliate assistant professor at the University of Washington College of Built Environments, Jake leads the Neighborhood Design Build Studio and is a regular consultant at Auburn University's Rural Studio. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Simona. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Glad to be here. Jake and I are going to talk a little bit about this project here in Seattle today. So first, we'll give you an overview, very brief, of our firm, and then a brief setup of the project as well. And Jake will go into some details around the timber. So first of all, Miller Hull, if you haven't heard of us, we have 2 offices, Seattle and San Diego, across the West Coast here, both Living Building Challenge certified offices that we're in, luckily, that we've designed, and we're also a just firm. We do almost every project type that there is. About the only thing we don't do is healthcare, outpatient. We do education for healthcare, but not the hospitals themselves. And we get to work around the world, a lot of different embassies for the U.S. government in recent years as well. And this is all kind of culminated in 10 living buildings, which you'll see about one today. And you saw Candida was mentioned earlier. Thanks for that. So we are certainly fortunate to be able to work in this realm as well. That brings us to Fisherman's Terminal. That's the one we're talking about today for the Port of Seattle. We'll see some different photos and renderings of it today. The real start of this project was really quite helpful coming from the port themselves. A huge organization, as you can imagine. They have about 100 buildings that they run, and obviously a very large component from the airport to the seaport here in Seattle. And one of the best things that they had as part of their client goals was to be the greenest and most energy efficient port in North America. And as you all know that work with clients that have these goals, it's really great because it helps set a precedent for us, helps give us a trajectory of where to go. So we said, what does that mean in terms of buildings? We can show you. And for us, that means it's a Living Building Challenge project, and that's what the port got behind. So just to orient you here for Seattle, if you're not too familiar with the city, this is our building here in Fisherman's Terminal, located just north of downtown Seattle.
Hello?
It's a really old building here, more than 110 years old. It's the ship supply building, part of the Fisherman's Terminal site here, as it opened around 1910, and it was a warehouse structure and currently was used as a fishery supply store, but has really been kind of derelict and not functioning since the Nisqually earthquake back in 2001. It's important to note that this is a public waterfront too, a working waterfront. There's a lot of public events that happen right here all the time, and it is a working waterfront. Fishing fleets that go to Alaska are using this as home port, so there is constant work that's happening right here where the building is located. And some of the design elements is to reuse the existing footprint from the 1916 building, because we wanted to be able to build in the same location. We completely renovated the building utilizing heavy timber, which is what we'll talk about today, a completely new exterior envelope and high performance glazing to move it up to net positive energy performance. And of course, seismic upgrades were with that, and moving it to all electric building systems, so no combustion to meet Living Building Challenge. And for those that aren't as familiar with it, just a quick look at that. And that means net positive energy, net positive water, and red list compliance, just a few of the main components around Living Building Challenge. So again, being able to take a organization that might be as risk averse as the Port of Seattle and moving towards this type of sustainability and performance and reuse application is really critical here with this client and this building type. We also wanted to note that in addition to all the reuse lumber on the project, everything that was new was FSC wood, 100%. So that's important to see that this can be done in various types of buildings and clients. And looking overall at some of our carbon reduction numbers, the whole building comes in around 832 tons or so. And you can see about half of that, a little more than, was savings that was carbon avoided from material selection and reuse. So that's really an important story as we talk to clients more and more about why they want to reuse some of these buildings. And I also wanted to just put a quick note too that equity is really an important consideration here too for the port. So these types of projects can be done with equity considerations, with high sustainability performance as well. You can reuse timber, you can make these existing buildings into high performance and still meet a lot of the great goals that we're all trying to move forward in terms of sustainability. So just a quick before and afters as we queue up Jake here. He's going to take you through some details around some of the lumber, and then we'll be back to kind of close out with a few takeaways for it. But Jake, I'll get ready to turn it over to you.
Fisherman's Terminal, old building. Early on, we did a LiDAR scan of the building, so we knew what was there, and we identified things that we thought we could retain, repurpose, and then things that we, using the materials that we had on hand, to recreate. So if we keep rolling here to the next slide. So early on, we knew that we were going to need to pick up and move the building so that we could provide a new foundation. This building, in this view, you can almost see at the light side of the right-hand side of the screen is the seawall. So we needed to provide a new structural slab that this could rest back on. And we looked at what we could save and identified most of the primary timber structure. This diagram here shows the contractor going through and identifying additional information that we could fold into our analysis. And if we just keep rolling here, in the end, we identified that we were going to try and expose all of the wood that we could that was reused from the project. The bulk of that being the heavy timber frame. And we developed a strategy to show that off with as much patina as we could. From that, we also then created NLT decking, which was talked about a little bit in the previous projects. And that was really a strategy of the larger timbers that we couldn't reuse structurally. How could we mill them down and get the most benefit from them? We had also optimistically looked at, could we use some of that to be remilled into car decking, floor finishes, and stair treads. In the end of the day, those weren't feasible. But spoiler alert, we did also, because this was a bid project, we had multiple products listed in our spec. So we were able to pivot as needed. This is part of that process of moving the building. You can see the bulk of the finishes on the inside of the building, which had been condemned for about 10 years before we started this project. Bulk of the finishes were removed so we could really see what we had inside. If we keep going, there was a brief video here, but the bulk of it is just showing when it was moved, we had to stabilize it. When we brought it back, we then stripped it clean. That allowed us to salvage any additional materials we could, insert a structural frame that worked in conjunction with the existing timber frame, and then reclad it with more high-performing insulation, assemblies, etc., so that we could meet all of our living building targets. I think one thing that, as Chris mentioned, when a client announces that they're interested in sustainability goals or have high ideals, part of the job becomes uh, educating them and continuing to cheerlead. So along the way, we started to showcase the existing timber. In this view, you can see how we paired the steel structure with that. We also identified that some of the columns weren't going to be long enough due to settling over the years. So we came up with ways to splice on new timbers. Go to the next slide. And that was a detailing strategy that we worked carefully with the structural team. P&D engineers worked with us on this, as well as the contractor, to identify details that we thought would be acceptable and doable for the team. So that involves, larger bolt holes. That involves being able to pivot when a timber is more twisted than one might expect. So you can see the results of some of that kind of careful detailing that we were able to do to allow these to be reused. If we go to the next slide. Along the way, to keep everybody from getting overly nervous about this process, we did a very deep dive into what were all of the materials that we had on hand. So we identified what would be remaining as primary structure, what could be stripped away, and then how might we use that. So these were part of the contract documents. This was in our drawing set. I think one way to really help make people feel comfortable with this process is to take photos and mark them up and put those in your construction and contract documents. So this is showing some of the gantry beams that we ended up repurposing for benches. If you go to the next slide. Things that you learn along the way, gantry beams, this old growth timber, as was discussed earlier, is not being made anymore. So anytime you can show it off is a great opportunity. The thing that, if we go back really quickly, the thing that you discover is these timbers have been bolted together for over 100 years. So you get rust stains inside the bolt holes. This is an example of something that we had to pivot and make sure that we were able to deliver. We essentially ended up plugging these with wooden plugs so that the beams wouldn't continue to weep onto the new concrete with rust staining. So that's the bench in its final landing spot outside. The other thing is recreating. So this project, the contractor jumped in to build NLT panels on site. This was sized both on the size of the material that they had available from the deconstruction of the building, but also what they could maneuver through the building. So these were about 2 by between 8 and probably 24-foot long sections of NLT that they made on site. If we go to the next slide, you can see that those end up being the main floor diaphragm for the mezzanine level and the upper level above that. Our initial target, if you go to the next slide, was to do 100% NLT reuse. In the end of the day, based on both wear and tear that had already existed on the building, rot pockets, other damage, staining from mechanical equipment, we were able to achieve about 65% of the NLT was milled from the existing timbers. The rest was made up with FSC certified timber. So you can see that process there. And then the last is just making sure that you continue to speak about this throughout the project so that it doesn't get VE'd out and it doesn't become overbearing to the process along the way. So bringing a contractor on board as soon as you can, talking through with the contractor, with the engineer, and with the client, what are the risks that we're taking here? Sorry. And then understanding the real costs. So this is kind of a general summary of where we were at on the project. Estimates and the final pay-apps that we realized. And, you know, there was some cost increase along the way. The demo and salvage was more than we expected. The cost to move the building back and forth, a little more than expected, but the NLT came in a fair amount under percentage-wise. And just being open and transparent along that helps make this less of a oh no moment and more of a oh wow moment for all of this reuse along the way.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. So just wrapping it up here, and we'll make these slides certainly available for you all, but just start coordinating early, as you've heard from other folks here. We always try to prefer salvage wood over new. That's kind of our first go-to. Cataloging before you demo is really important because even as Jake showed, sometimes we have an intent to use 100% of the lumber, but we only get 60. Have a plan B, which speaks to that certainly. And then talk about warranty items up front. Since these are reused items, these are not necessarily covered by traditional architectural warranties. So make sure that's clear with everybody. And then finally, also show the carbon cost in addition to the actual monetary cost. We find that's really important to help tell the story about why we're doing this, and certainly helps to educate the industry too about a bit more information about why this is so important in carbon. That takes us through our portion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for rolling with it. And you sped up to meet the moment. So we do have a few questions. I think I had one here at the top, but I want to start with Laurel's. When is it too late to deconstruct, and how were you able to do this on a building that had been condemned? You know, what were the limitations there? What needed to happen for deconstruction to even, you know, for the crews to even go in?
It was, I can speak to that a little bit. It was partially before my time on the project, but essentially it had been damaged in the Nisqually earthquake. And so the building had been stabilized, so it wasn't about to like completely fall over. And they just didn't know what they were going to be able to do with it next. So working with the client, working with the structural engineer to make sure it was safe to get in. LiDAR scans can be done in various ways. And then just starting the process. I mean, I think this building, part of the story for reusing it was built too close to the shoreline setback. So by rebuilding in the place that it was with the building that we had, it allowed this to stay part of the working waterfront. So they were interested in helping figure out that process along the way. It was also a fairly iconic building in the collection of buildings on this site. So trying to find what is the right narrative to do this is important.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And in this instance, it really became the client was interested in this as well. So they helped work with us to do it.
I had a note in the chat about an upcoming Climate Smart Wood Group webinar on case studies on salvaged and reclaimed wood procurement, and that's May 27th. So check out that link. Someone requesting, coming from the East Coast, sounds like a short list of contractors and engineers working to do this kind of work would be extremely helpful for architects and designers who are trying to keep it moving. I would agree with that. Maybe that's
Just
something we can think about where to host.
A few others.
Yeah.
once here, that it is a public building, so it can be visited, and the project process was a public bid on this.
And there was a question about whether Urban Evolution's Glue Lamb Guide will be available. Yes, it will. It will be public. They're working on it. It sounds like it might be 6 months out or so.
To TBD. We're our heads down. So we're doing it.
And yep, this series is being recorded. So we are just about at time here. Is there any other question that anyone on the team noticed that we'd like to ask here?
Someone asked about a cost comparison and if that would be available, kind of related to the work that Urban Evolutions is working on, but it seemed like Miller Hull had some information on cost as well. So I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Yeah, I'll just very quickly say I'm happy to engage with you on. There's products that where it makes sense, and again, that material driven, simple fabrication, those tend to be products like car decking that make a lot of sense. NLT panels. I can talk further. Please reach out if you'd like more.
Okay, we're at 1 o'clock. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thanks to our speakers. A recording will be available, and tune in for the next one on May 20th.